Welcome and thank you for attending the Black History Matters series presented by the National Abolition Hall of Fame and Museum. My name is Victoria Basurto and I am a current senior at Colgate University, located in Hamilton, New York, as well as an intern for the National Abolition Hall of Fame and Museum. I will be facilitating the series of 28 presentations that will be released throughout the month of February 2021 and that you can view on our YouTube channel or on our website. Now I will lead you through some introductory statements. The National Abolition Hall of Fame and Museum is located in Peterborough, New York, in the building that you can see on the screen, where the inaugural meeting of the New York State Anti-Slavery Society was held in 1835. NAHOF's mission is as follows. The National Abolition Hall of Fame and Museum honors anti-slavery abolitionists, their work to end slavery and the legacy of that struggle, and strives to complete the second and ongoing abolition, the moral conviction to end racism. NAHOF has worked in coordination with the Gareth Smith Estate National Historic Landmark, which is also located in Peterborough, New York, to create the Black History Matters series. The following is a statement of the purpose of the Black History Matters series. You can read along on the screen. NAHOF supports racial justice movements seeking to address racial inequality, given the resonance with NAHOF's mission to address the second and ongoing abolition to end racism. NAHOF believes a significant number of Americans do not understand the current racial justice protest due to their unfamiliarity with 4 centuries of Black American history because this history was either excluded or taught inadequately in schools. NAHOF knows that education is a powerful step towards ending racism, and that understanding the history of the enslavement and dehumanization of Black Americans provides critical context for the ongoing racial justice movements and the persistence of racism in America. Given NAHOF's commitment to strengthening knowledge of history as one route to confront racism, NAHOF will present Black History Matters, a series of crash courses covering some examples of neglected topics in Black American history throughout the month of February 2021. I would like to now introduce our presenter, Dr. Evan Faulkenbury. Dr. Faulkenbury is an associate professor of history at SUNY Cortland. His courses and research focus on the civil rights movement, public history, and United States history. He earned his PhD in history from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill in 2016. His book, Poll Power, the Voter Education Project and the Movement for the Ballot in the American South, tells the story of the behind-the-scenes civil rights organization that funded hundreds of grassroots African-American registration campaigns during the 1960s and 1970s. I'd like to now invite Dr. Faulkenbury to begin his presentation on his experience with education in the American South.
Hello, thanks for having me. I'm appreciative of everyone at NAHOF and for allowing me to speak to you today on this topic. So I'll get right into it, and I'll be happy in the future, just before I get into it, to talk any more about what I'm sharing here, go into more detail, anything like that. So, but I'll keep this talk, somewhat shortish because I know that your time is valuable. But thank you for giving me your time. And once again, thanks to all the wonderful people at NAHOF for sponsoring this program and for allowing me to take part. So I wanted to talk very briefly about what Black History Month means to me. I'll just kind of go right into it. So I wanted to just really share my story, in a sense, some of my own personal background and biography. So I really grew up in North Carolina, and I went to private Christian schools my entire education, from kindergarten all the way through college. And in those years, in those educational settings, Black History Month was not a thing, at least that I remember, in any kind of significant way. I don't want to say for sure that it was totally ignored, but I don't think it was definitely not a priority. I don't ever remember it as a part of February growing up in these school environments. And so, I have some photos here of some of the schools that I went to. So One school is called Northside in Charlotte, North Carolina, and then another school called Hickory Grove, also in Charlotte, North Carolina. And as you can see, they're churches. They were evangelical, conservative churches. And yeah, Black History Month was not part of the curriculum. And Hickory Grove wouldn't be a part of this, but Northside likely would be. But a lot of these kinds of private schools popped up in the 1960s, 1970s in response to segregation, or rather desegregation of schools across the South. So a lot of private schools popped up as places that could, stay all white. That might not have been the explicit purpose behind them, but it was the de facto one at the very least. Um, and so growing up kindergarten through 12th grade, in my history classes, Black history, African American history, the history of the slave trade, of the history of American slavery, of the internal slave trade, of Reconstruction, of Jim Crow's America, of the segregationist movement, all that sort of thing was really minimized. And Black History Month as like a time to celebrate and really think about the contributions and importance of African American history to American history was just not on the radar at all. And so I feel like looking back on that time, I really missed out on that. And then I also have a picture up here. I went to Liberty University for my undergrad, and that was because just the environment that I was raised in. Liberty was really just about the only choice, and so Liberty itself was in my history classes, and there at present, Black History Month was again just not it wasn't a thing. Maybe a minor thing, but hardly showing the importance of what it should be. But it was while I was at Liberty that I became really interested in history and started to think, for myself a little bit more. And I began to, on a personal note, just began to disagree with a lot of the politics and the kind of religion and religious interpretation that Liberty promoted. And so I found myself kind of more isolated there intellectually. And so, long story short, I decided to go to graduate school for history, thinking that I might want to become a professor or research history as a job, as a vocation. And so I went first for my master's in history at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, starting in 2010. And I was super fortunate because I was a poor grad student and recently married, and I was able to get a job as a grad assistant in the special collections in the archives at UNC Charlotte. And so here there's a photograph of the reading room in the archives at UNCC. And I worked there part-time for one academic year, and I helped do research on Charlotte's history, create some exhibits in the library and digital exhibits as well. And in doing that research, it awakened me to African American history, specifically around Charlotte, North Carolina. And I also have a photograph up here of a man named Reginald Hawkins. And he was a local civil rights leader in Charlotte. He was a dentist in his day job, but then he was an activist around the clock for years, leading demonstrations and boycotts and voting drives. And I ended up writing my master's thesis on Reginald Hawkins when in 1968 he ran for governor in North Carolina, and he lost, but he helped kind of transform this sort of Black Power movement into the political sphere of North Carolina at the same time. And so just by being in this archive, by being surrounded by history and primary sources, I began to see just what I had been missing in my prior education about Black history. I realized I didn't know much. I didn't know a whole lot, but just by being surrounded by and interpreting and thinking about these primary sources and secondary sources to help set the stage, I really just became um, so interested in the topic. And so after I got my master's, I decided I wanted to just go all the way and pursue a PhD in history. And so UNC Charlotte did not have a PhD in history, only a master's. And so I applied around and I decided to attend the best school that I got into, which was the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And so I decided to go there for my PhD in history. And I have up here, there's a photograph of the campus of UNC where I spent my years from 2012 to 2016. And when I was there, I just became even more embedded in learning everything I could about American history and African American history. Um, and once again, just the more I learned, the more I realized I didn't know. The more I realized how much I had missed out on in my previous education and just how much more there was to learn. And I wrote my dissertation on an organization called the Voter Education Project, or the VEP for short. And they are a little known organization that was in Atlanta, Georgia. But during the 1960s and 70s, especially, or especially in the 1960s, I should say, to make a long story short, they they financed a good portion of the civil rights movement in the South by um, getting a lot of money from nonprofit foundations and then pooling that money together in their Atlanta office and then dispersing it out in small quantities to local movements for voting rights across the South, across the 11 states of the old Confederacy, to groups like the NAACP and SNCC and CORE, but also to local grassroots organizations as well, hundreds of them, in fact. And so the VEP would send out $500, $2,000, $5,000, not very much money, but the money would help sponsor voter registration campaigns, to print flyers, to book like a headquarters, to pay bills, to buy food for people, to allow people to go and canvass and bring people to the courthouse to register to vote, and thereby empowering African American voters and Black political power in the South in the 1960s. Um, and John Lewis, who just recently passed away a few months back, he was one of the leaders of the Voter Education Project. And you can see one of the photographs of him here as well. So during my time in grad school, I just dove as deep as I could into Black history and learning everything I could, because I just felt it was, missing from my own education and felt like it was key to understanding all of US history. And so in my own way, I wanted to try to, help, be an ally, and do what I could to learn and to share what knowledge I found with the wider world, which led me to publishing my book last year. So I turned my dissertation into a book. And so this is the cover of the book. It's called Pull Power, the Voter Education Project and the Movement for the Ballot in the American South, and published by the University of North Carolina Press just last year in 2019. And you can buy it on UNC Press's website or online or anything else like that. But I tried to take my dissertation, which is unwieldy and too long, and condense it into a much more readable and interesting account of the VEP and their history. And the cover of the book here, I found a photograph in the archives where the VEP papers are stored at the Atlanta University Center's library, the Woodruff Library. And I just love this photograph because it's sometime in 1962 or 1963. I'm not sure. I'm also not even sure, who the people are in the photo or where this is taking place. But it's a huge line of people lined up outside a local courthouse waiting to get inside to register to vote. And to me, it just spoke of the power of grassroots activism and how local people across the South were determined to fight back against, centuries of oppression from slavery, white supremacy, Jim Crow, segregation, and to fight for their civil rights and for their uh, for the ability to vote and to take part in political action and civil rights action in America. Um, so that's then led me to where I'm at today. I teach history now at SUNY Cortland, and I've been here since the fall of 2016, since finishing up my PhD at UNC. And what I still try to do now is to share what I've learned about African American history with the campus, in my classes. And I'm very cognizant that I do not identify as African American or a person of color, but as white. And so what I've tried to do is to be an ally and to never try to speak for any of my African American students or people of color on campus or anything like that. Never to speak for them or to try to say like what their experience in history is or was or anything like that, but rather to help bring through my skills as a historian to bring out some of those important parts of history that might not be as easy to talk about for a lot of people, but to show the importance of knowing history, of learning about primary sources so that we can learn what slavery was like, what the slave trade was like, what Jim Crow was like. And so I've taught classes on those topics. And I've also tried to sponsor or bring together some larger campus-wide conversations. And so I have up here some images, some flyers that from some talks we've done previously in the history department, such as a talk a few years ago on Confederate monuments. Should they stay or should they go? And so that's still a relevant topic right now, has been for a number of years now. But just to sponsor a talk, to discuss through the lens of African American history, what's the purpose of these Confederate monuments? Why were they put there to begin with? Why are they still there today? And to have a conversation about what do we do with them? Why are they important? And that kind of thing. Similarly, we had another conversation about was slavery a choice? Historians answer Kanye West. And that was from a specific incident where Kanye West, talked about slavery being a choice. And so we took his comments, which were very public, and again tried to just have a public conversation about them to learn from one another and to learn more about slavery and that history. So where I'm at today, just to kind of summarize, is just to say I the first big chunk of my life, history, the history of African Americans was not a big part of my education or my interests at all. But through self-education and learning in our archives and libraries in grad school, it's become something that I'm very interested in and want to share with the wider community across SUNY Cortland, across Central New York, that kind of thing. So like I said, I'm happy to talk more about this in the future, but I just want to end by saying thank you for listening to my brief story, and hope to stay in touch in the future. Bye.
I'd like to thank Dr. Faulkenbury for that educational presentation. If you're interested in learning more about this topic, Dr. Faulkenbury has provided a reference list of sources with websites that you can explore to learn more. This reference list will be linked beneath the video in the video description. I will also invite you to fill out a quick survey linked in that same video description, which will help us gather feedback about the specific topic. This survey will take you no more than 5 minutes to fill out and will provide us with valuable information that will help us in the formation of future presentations like this one. Should you have any questions regarding the presentation itself, Dr. Faulkenbury has made his email available so that you may contact him with any questions that you may have. Additionally, please do contact NAHOF with any questions or if you're interested in learning more about the organization and its work. NAHOF's contact information is available on the screen. Once again, I'd like to thank Dr. Faulkenbury for providing a program for Black History Matters. I would also like to thank you, the audience, for joining us on this educational journey. Please remember that we will be releasing a new video each day this February of 2021. We hope we will see you at our next presentation. Thank you.